two things I want to address with you, and usually we have more questions, but right now we're gonna have some audibles. We like to call this an audible because I love your story and that what you're giving out here. Talk to me about the importance of the court of home opinion versus the court of public opinion. We're talking about a wife, we're talking about kids, we're talking about they supposed to believe you who you are off the muscle, but they are human beings. Especially if you have a spouse, she is a human being, so she has to question something and ask you the tough questions, and you have to sit there and humble yourself and answer them when you feel it's absolutely ridiculous to answer. Talk to me about the court of home opinion.
Yeah, the court of home opinion can be rough, but it actually is something that you have to build up all the time. So it is something that you are constantly making deposits in. If we look at this as a bank account, you're making deposits daily. You're putting in a little bit every day, and you're just giving a little every day to try to build and build and build this balance. Because someday things may go sideways on you. Someday that market may crash and the value of all that you put in may be reduced. However, by working with that and understanding that and realizing that there's going to be a lot of scrutiny around a lot of things, it comes back to that core person and that core relationship in which you believe. And I know, and I encourage my wife all the time that she has to write a book of her own, because being in that limelight with a media storm, with the frenzy, with reporters knocking on your door, and it's all about some crazy allegations. Well, most people, they look at this stuff and they see what's on the news and they say, well, it must be true. I mean, look at this guy. They put his picture on there. Of course he did it.
Right.
And for me, it was the belief that this couldn't happen. This didn't happen. And knowing who that true person is inside. And knowing that I had to continue to make these deposits, because not only for my wife in particular, who was leaving the house, going to work today, every day, just trying to keep our family from financial ruins, trying to keep us afloat, trying to keep food on our table, because I was unable to do any of that stuff. She knew that we had to bond together to overcome this, because some of these challenges are too great for one man to take on.
Absolutely.
And it takes a team, it takes that strength. And it was really a time for us to unite and rise up to this challenge, and we overcame.
Absolutely. You know, when I think about these tests and trials within marriages or within foundations, I often think about the Twin Towers. And what I mean by that is the Twin Towers stood bright and tall in one of the greatest cities in the world. And when turbulence came and destruction came, the planes crashed into the beams. Many people lost their lives. Lives were changed throughout this whole public endeavor. But today, if you go visit Ground Zero, the beams are still there strong. They're not as visible in the sky, but the foundation was shaped, but it still stands. So a lot of marriages get put to the test to see if they still would be standing at all. I mean, they might not stand that tall in the public eye, but people will come and admire what is left there standing as a foundation of strength. So I admire that. Talk to me about the sounds, though. And what I mean by the sounds, when things are taken out of your life, people underestimate how the soundtrack of your life changes. There's no more kids running around in your office. There's no more secretaries saying, Dr. Patton, someone on line one. You're alone in a house when your life had different soundtrack. How did you deal with that?
The soundtrack of my life before would have been just kind of going down the road. You might even had a trap beat in there. And so you just bopping your head, just going down the street, and you're like, all right, life is good. All of a sudden, there was silence. The silence was deafening. You couldn't hear anything. I couldn't even hear a simple beat. And sitting in an empty house, kids in school, wife at work, left alone to my thoughts, wondering, why was this happening to me? Why? And the second I stopped asking why, and saying, well, I can't change why this may have happened or why I'm going through this. But what I can change is the way I approach this and the way I address this through an outcome. And it was at that moment that I said the soundtrack started to change, and it started to start playing a happy tune again. And I started feeling a little bit of swag again, and I started bopping my head again. And it was that time the soundtrack started coming back. But this time, man, it was just booming from the trunk. I mean, it was just loud, like the neighbors were just looking, and while my windows rattling, and they could see that energy, and people around me could see that energy, and lots of my friends and my family and neighbors who all supported me and watched this whole thing unravel around their lives. They realized that, hey, there's nothing stopping this guy now. Let him keep going. Let's take his beat. Let's let that resonate with us. And we had a whole new soundtrack.
I believe there's a point in every man's life where the beat they were given will stop. It will die, and you have to create your own beat to your own drum. And once you find that, I think that's a transcending form into being the higher level of doctrine that you can upgrade yourself to be the best version of yourself. When you start when you march to the beat of your own drum, right? That's something to not take lightly, because your parents or your guardians or your societal growing up will give you this beat. And some of us don't make it off that beat. Some of us die with that beat. Some of us don't understand how the beat needs to change and grow. The patterns are different once you start learning more. But once that deafening sound comes and you have to create your own sound, it's like shedding your skin and becoming a whole new person.